Okay, Mon.
Morning, Pastor. Just to clarify lang po, the Caesarea Pentecost is for the Gentiles. So it is part of the main Pentecost, not on the post-Pentecost.
Yes, it was after Jerusalem, but it is not a duplication of Jerusalem. In the case of Samaria, it's a special case because Samaritans needed the authentication of the apostles' authority because of their special condition as Samaritans. So it's not Pentecost. It's not an outpouring of the Spirit. It is not baptism in the Spirit. And Ephesus is not, because these are unconverted disciples of someone who came from John the Baptist, but they did not know the gospel in reality. And what Paul had to do was to preach to them the gospel, and then they received the Holy Spirit, and there was special authentication, but then they had to be baptized in a valid way, their original baptism being invalid. But this is also not like Pentecost. The only event post-Pentecost Jerusalem that is exactly like it is Caesarea, and we have the report of Peter himself saying that. So it was Peter himself who said, the Spirit fell upon them as he had with us at the beginning. As I've said, there's a gap here, and Peter had to go back all the way to Pentecost of Jerusalem to see anything similar. From Join, what can you say to some testimony you spoke in S? Paki-kompleto yung tanong. Spoke in known language but unknown to speaker during a so-called baptism in the Holy Spirit in our modern days experience in charismatic movement. Well, I do not know of as a personal witness of such a case, but we will have our time of dealing with speaking in other tongues and then speaking in tongues. As I've said, the miracle is the speaking in other tongues. Speaking in tongues is a form of prophecy, but not miracle from boys. So it's wrong to say that what Christians needed today is Pentecost baptism of the Spirit, because even the technical term Pentecost is not an individual experience, but an event in history. Yes, it is wrong. And as we will also learn in the next lecture about baptism in the Spirit, it will refer also exactly to where the language is used specifically. And you only have two events where baptism in the Spirit is used as an event, also Jerusalem and Caesarea. So to say that we need Pentecost again today, compare that to saying we need Christ to be crucified again. We need Christ to die again and to rise from the dead again. You don't say that because it's an event that has happened already with continuing effects. It's a once for all events. So the same is true with the outpouring of the Spirit. The problem is not that we do not have the outpouring of the Spirit. The problem is Christians keep seeking carnal methods in order to advance the cause of the church when we are already possessed with the Holy Spirit. And if we follow his ways and means, then there is the promise of fruitfulness to the word. If you're looking for something of a carnal advance of the church in wealth, in numbers, in influence, let's say politically or in other ways, and you use carnal methodology and you're not faithful to the message, and then you blame it on not having Pentecost, the problem is with you, not with the fact that Pentecost has already happened. Other questions? Yes.
lang po. Hello. Ayan po. Good morning po, Pastor.
Morning.
Yung nangyari po sa outpouring of the Spirit in Jerusalem, may watching world po doon na naging sign nyo na God is with them. Yung sa Caesarea din po ba, may mga tao nung pagsasalita nila ng ang papuri nila kay Lord. And then nakita din po ng mundo na God is with those Gentiles. May ano rin po ba
No,
audience na nakalap?
hindi mundo ang nakakita, kundi apostol. Siguro mas tanggap natin ang patotoo ng apostol kaysa ng mundo. In fact, Apostle Peter also was the one who had to explain to the people observing in Jerusalem their misinterpretation of the events. What were they saying? These people are drunk so early. And Peter had to explain, no, this is the fulfillment of what Joel, the prophet, had said. So it was Peter who had to explain in Acts 2, and it was Peter also who had to explain following Caesarea to the church in Jerusalem in Acts 11. So it's both Peter. You already have the parallel there. The witness, the explanation is from Peter. So I do not care if what the world says on Pentecost, and if there is no witness of the world because it happened in a room. In the case of Cornelius, what matters to me is that an apostle had borne witness to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Dan.
Sir, clarification lang po. Una ho yung sa case ng Samaria. Hindi pa sila baptized ng Holy Spirit. Can we say na Christian na sila although wala pa yung Holy Spirit sa kanila?
Well, they have not received the Holy Spirit because they needed in a special case for them to recognize apostolic authority. You see, these are the two significant issues, the Holy Spirit and the Word. But you cannot recognize the source of the Word unless you recognize apostolic authority. So the partnership of the Word and the Spirit is what is being safeguarded in what happened in Samaria. So they received the Holy Spirit only after they had to recognize apostolic authority. Go ahead.
Another pastor, so sa Pentecost, we can pwede po natin sabihin na it's a real Pentecost kasi andun po yung presence ng mga apostles.
Well, it was Pentecost because kaya tinawag ng Pentecost, the day of Pentecost yun. Mayroong Feast of Pentecost sa Jerusalem, na observe sa Jerusalem, kaya napakaraming tao from different people with different languages. They were identified. So it was really Pentecost. Pero the outpouring of the Holy Spirit that happened on Pentecost is what is significant because it is fulfillment of the prophecies of the outpouring. My contention is that that's the language of outpouring that is described of the Jerusalem event, which is only duplicated in Caesarea, not in Samaria or Ephesus. So conclusion is that you had the outpouring of the Spirit in two batches of Jews and Gentiles, which is especially one thrust of the book of Acts, that the gospel was brought to Jews and Gentiles. Go ahead, Mon.
Pastor, concerning Samaria and Ephesus, can we call this as a normal conversion of what you call this individuals compared to the outpouring of the Spirit where everyone will receive the Holy Spirit?
Well, normal conversion in the sense that what happened in Samaria was through the ministry of Philip, they were converted. In the case of Ephesus, they were false converts, but were led to true conversion by Paul. That's normal conversion. But because of the special situation on both Samaria and Ephesus, there needed to be an authentication by the Spirit in a special way. In the case of Samaria, it had to be by the laying on of hands by the apostles, which never happened again. And then in the case of Ephesus, they had to hear the gospel from Paul, and then they were baptized, and there was to be an authentication by the Spirit through their speaking in tongues. Again, that is not something, I'll say this later after the break, that these are events that are described and reported to happen, not a command that is an imperative for people to seek. From Joan, can we say that in a Pentecostal and charismatic movement, there is still faithful gospel presentation resulting to true conversion? In some of them, yes. I'm sure God in His sovereign grace can still use the truth of the gospel that is preached in a ministry, even if it is wrapped in so much error, God can still get through. There are those who think the smallest amount of error hopelessly damns you. I have a higher view of the sovereignty of God. To me, the sovereignty of God means that He can overcome even error that surrounds the truth. The truth is not cowardly, that runs away once error is there. The truth can still be used by God to convert sinners in a ministry wrapped in error. But I will advise that true convert to seek maturity by, if there is no reformation in the church, then separation is the right step to do. Joan says, I can say I'm one of those pastors. Well, I hope not one of those who are preaching the error, but one of those converted from the error. Let's take a break.